Hello, welcome back to Geek Warning, the podcast that puts the world's most interesting cycling tech and the best cycling tech into one place. I'm Dave Rome, Senior Tech Editor at Escape Collective, and joining me today...
Suvi Loponen.
Hello, Suvi.
Hello.
And Alex Hum.
Hello, Alex. Back with the UK contingent. The three of us have had a pretty busy last few weeks writing up new group sets, things without cables, a lot of battery-related products is coming to the market in June. It's been a busy month. I mean, yeah, by my count, I think we've had group set releases from Shimano, SRAM, Campagnolo, TRP, and I might be forgetting one SRAM there. But yeah, anyway, we've got more to talk about there. We've obviously a few episodes ago, it feels like we weren't talking about Shimano wireless all that long ago, but we're back with more. In addition to that, the UCI has done UCI things and has announced some rule changes that have set the internet alight. So we're going to dive into those briefly, sort of explain what they actually mean. I think there's a bit of false information around them. And also sort of dig into a bit of the details of why, perhaps well-intentioned, why they might have missed the mark, and maybe even some unexpected or unintended consequences that might come from these rulings. So I think there's plenty to talk about. There's also a few other little bits of news at the end. And for members of Escape Collective that get access to everything we do, they'll get access, as usual, to the end of this episode, which is our Ask a Wrench segments, where members submit questions and we answer them. So this week, I am joined by pro race mechanic Brad Copeland to answer a number of questions there. So yeah, you'll hear what those are at the end of the episode. All right, Suvi, Alex, let's talk about some of this UCI rule changes. Some may say nonsense, others may say, what would they say? I don't know. I blanked on that.
No, they'd all say nonsense.
Okay.
What's another word for nonsense?
Yeah, lack of progress, some would say, not wanting everyone to be comfortable. So, Alex, you've been writing up this about what these rule changes actually mean and sort of giving a real good explainer on this, which should be published by the time this podcast is live. So can you explain to us what these rules are?
So there's two main changes. That's the main thing. At the minute, the only kind of rule governing bars really is the minimum width has to be 350 millimeters at the drops. So it's very easy to comply with, especially with flared bars. In order to try and improve safety and to some extent slow down the peloton, the UCI changing the regulation so there's a minimum width of the drops that they have to be, as well as a minimum width that can separate the two hoods. And one of these measurements matters a lot more than the other. So the measurement of the drops, which now has to be 400 millimeters from the outside of each side of the bar, isn't too much of an issue. I think if riders are using flared bars, pretty much anyone, even if they're using what would be considered a 360 millimeter bar at the hoods, that would probably comply.
And that measurement, sorry, just to not to cut you off there, but that measurement also would include, like, it's basically if the UCI commissaire is at the race and pulls the tape measure across them, so it would include like the width of the bar tape, for example. So there's probably some tricky things riders could do by like double wrapping the ends of their bars if they had to.
Yeah. This rule would be very, very easy to circumvent, the 400 millimeter one. And also, even if we weren't going to do double wraps of bar tape, potentially just adding a little bit more flare to the end would also mean that a bar would comply. The real measurement, which is a cause of concern for a lot of people, and rightly so, is the measurement between the two shifter hoods. So this now has to be no less than 320 millimeters, which might sound fairly narrow, but I think actually when you start taking a tape measure to bikes, you realise actually it's not all that narrow at all, because even on a 400 millimeter bar that measures 400 center to center, even with the hoods pointed parallel, so no intern at all, they measure around 340 millimeters because of the actual width of the shifter. So even on a 400 mil bar, you're only within 2 centimeters of breaking that rule. And as soon as you have a flared bar and the levers canter inwards a little bit, it's very easy for a 400 mil bar to become illegal. The Van Rysel RCRF I have at the minute Actually, interesting. One of the comments I had in my info review is the cockpit felt pretty wide. It felt probably wider than I'd want it to be, especially it's 440 millimeters of it drops and around 410 at the where you'd mount the hoods to.
Yeah.
But because of a flared profile, that immediately brings the gap between the hoods down to 310.
Yeah,
so
right.
Without me actually wanting to turn my levers in, that would be a position that is now illegal for competition as of the 1st of January next year.
Yeah, and I think it's probably worth noting, like, you're probably of average shoulder width in the grand scheme of cyclists. Maybe, at least in the range of cyclists that have to comply to these UCI level rules. But then you get, there's, it seems like these rules, and I think this is where the outcry is it seems like these rules are sort of overlooked, that there's, in particular, women and professional women that are often quite narrow in the shoulders, and often, this isn't them just trying to cheat the wind. It's a matter of wanting or needing a much more suitable fitting bar. And I mean, we've had decades of limited options in this space of bars not being narrow enough, and all of a sudden we're having this rule that says you can't even have them. So, Suvi, I mean, I'm kind of keen to hear from you. Like, if you're building up a road bike tomorrow, like, what's the width handlebar that you're selecting for fit reasons?
It would be a 36 bar. And I could probably go even narrower than that. But like you said, there's not many options. I know there's a few 34s, but at the same time, 36 for me seems to be quite the nice balance. And I would also tilt the shifters. And as many, I have taken the tape measure to every single handlebar I have at home at the moment. And I think I've got one gravel bike that actually complies. And this is a gravel bike. So, yeah. And it is, like Alex said, it is not the issue is in the external width of the handlebar. It's the one between. And even on gravel, I was surprised about it. When I saw it, I was like, surely these are going to be wider than that. But it isn't, because it is just that when you tilt them, especially when you've got flared bars, I wouldn't set my shifter straight, because then when I'm on the drops, I can, the actual levers, they're not in the right position. If you've set your shifter straight, it just doesn't work. So yeah, I think it is disproportionately going to affect smaller riders, and probably going to impact, I think, the options that we're going to have going forward.
So I think it's worth covering sort of why the UCI took these steps, or why they're looking to take these steps. And it's fundamentally, it's because they're trying to prevent what they consider to be a safety issue, where the rider in the hoods ends up with like brake levers sort of poking out sideways into like a catch area where riders overlapping could sort of catch each other onto each other's brake levers, or onto the widened hooks of the handlebars that are now flaring out wider and wider. And where we got to from that, why flared handlebars have become so trendy, is because these riders were across the peloton and across, you see this, everyone doing this on the road, or a lot of people doing it on the road, angling in their levers for, what's believed to be a more aerodynamic position for most people. And it also, for a lot of the cases, it actually just feels better to have those levers slightly angled in. But yeah, a lot of the riders were pushing it pretty far in the effort to try to create like these like pseudo extensions out from their handlebar, and they could really tuck their elbows in and sort of hang off the edges of their hoods and hold a really like almost like a time trial like position. And so the UCI a few years ago started to figure out ways how to control this, and they came out with this 3D printed tool that would allow them to measure the angle of the hoods in relation to the hook or the drop of the handlebar. And what that tool didn't account for is manufacturers quickly adapting the shape of the handlebar. So if you angle the drop of the handlebar, all of a sudden you can now get those levers far further inboard than what that tool would otherwise allow with a straight handlebar. And I think that's kind of where we're at the moment, is the UCI is being like, okay, well, we tried to stop you from turning in your levers dangerously because there's various reasons there, but manufacturers are saying it's dangerous on a carbon bar to do it. They also thought it was a safety issue. So yeah, the UCI is saying we tried to get you to do this, but then, every all the manufacturers just made flared handlebars that just allowed you to circumnavigate around our tool that was measuring this. So now we're just going to give you this minimum width that you have to have, which forces you to have those levers straight. But I think everyone is in agreement that's watching this, and everyone that's measured their own handlebars that, perhaps aren't on handlebars as narrow as Suvi. Everyone's going, oh, well, this isn't this isn't enough width. This is actually really too narrow. And I think that's probably where we're sitting at the moment.
What seems to be like the real error here by the UCI is just the blanket measurements.
Yeah.
And it's not something they've done in other fit-related disciplines. So, you look at time trialing and is it 190 centimetres or around there? If you're taller than that, you get an extra bit of length on your extensions to make the fit actually relative to your body correct. It'd be nice to see that come in with a handlebar. So, if you've got a shoulder width of X amount, you can bring that measurement down to 300 millimeters or 280.
Yeah. And
just mean that, you are still meaning that riders have to have a proportional fit. You're not going to have a 6 foot Wout van Aert riding 230 mil bars.
Yeah.
But, especially for those smaller riders and the majority of the women's peloton, they can actually continue using equipment that is anatomically correct for them.
Yeah.
Whereas at the minute, that just isn't the case.
Or at least closer. I don't know if even the current equipment is really suiting all the small riders, but it's at least closer to it than these new regulations would allow.
But I do agree fundamentally that flared bars and how people are setting up their bikes in races now is potentially problematic. And it's actually quite timely. When I went to BMC a couple of weeks ago, they were saying that since the flared bar revolution in the peloton, they see a far higher incidence of damaged or broken bars at the bend of the drop, because now when they crash, all the force is acting on the end of the drop and then is transferred into the curve of the bar. Whereas with a traditional straighter bar, the whole drop and the shifter share the impact.
Yeah.
So there's just less issue there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So there is a genuine cause of concern from the UCI. It's just potentially a pretty badly executed way to remedy it.
Yes. Yep. So I do think that there needs to be a ruling. I think fundamentally the number they've settled on, and as you say, Alex, the blanket rule that one size fits all, I think is the problem here. And I think some tweak to that ruling, and I think we'll probably have see the internet calm down and the riders be able to ride positions that are actually suitable and fair. But right now it does certainly feel like the smaller riders in the women's peloton are getting the shortest of sticks here.
Yeah, and as far as I've seen, I think one of the things that gets people's backs up and it makes it very hard to understand and get behind this rule is the numbers feel very arbitrary. There doesn't seem to have been any justifications around how we've reached 400mm outside to outside and 320 between the shifters. So especially once you start taking a tape measure to your own bikes, it does feel like the numbers have just been plucked out of thin air and they haven't actually been studied. So I think if they could release how they've come to this conclusion, that would probably help calm the arguments down as well.
Yeah, so I mean, this minimum width, where it gets silly is that, like, if you imagine there's 3 major drivetrain manufacturers in the world tour, perhaps there's 1 or 2 other that come and go. They dabble, like the FSA once in a while make an appearance, but their shifter shapes and their chosen ergonomics will probably also have a factor in this, because it's literally like sticking a yardstick in between the shifters and seeing if it fits is kind of what they're doing here. So like, what do you think? Like, Campagnolo bringing back the thumb shifter buttons, could that be a problem? Like, what's
potentially, it depends on where the UCI settle on whether they're actually going to take the measurement from. If it's literally the narrowest point between the shifters, then all of a sudden everyone heralding the return of the thumb shifter are probably going to be putting their head in their hands and questioning why they asked for it back. But it also goes beyond that, and I would suggest you go and read the full story I've done that explains this. But even between the same brand, if you look at SRAM's red shifter from the previous generation, the D1, compared to the E1, anyone that's used them will know that they're very different shapes, and the redesign meant that the shifter body did grow in length. It's something that I think, Suvi, you found with the Addict you've been riding, is it actually changes your fit requirements because it is a little bit longer. What that means is, especially if you're using the E1 lever on a flared bar, is that extra reach is now negatively going to affect you, because if you have your shifter set the same in-turn, the same angle, there's just more lever to converge together.
Yeah.
So from my rough calculations, the two E1 levers set at the exact same position on the exact same bar as a D1 set of levers will be 3 or 4 millimeters closer together, which Doesn't sound like a lot, but considering it is an identical position, that is the difference between it being illegal or illegal.
Yeah.
So it feels weird to have the measurement point as a moving target rather than an actual fixed part of the bike.
Yeah, and I think that's my biggest issue with this ruling is I think the unintended consequences of that is that riders and teams are going to ask their sponsoring component brands to make us narrower hoods, figure out how to get the width out of that. And I think that just leads to like less ergonomic, more expensive, less durable shifters, which are already really expensive. And yeah, I don't necessarily think that's positive progress for anyone.
Yeah, my fear would be that this affects not only the shifter design, but also especially with integrated cockpits, the design. So we're going to potentially start seeing longer reach cockpits or longer stems and potentially shorter reach levers. So for the actual point that's measured at the intern is less affected by this rule.
Yep.
Which, if you're a pro rider and you're trying to ride at 50k an hour and win races, good for you. I would argue that most people that end up riding this stuff do neither of those things. So yeah, I just hope that this doesn't come in and negatively affect the mass market that actually ride these things, rather than what is essentially a very, very small segment of the market.
Yep. All right. Well, yeah, I think we're probably in agreement with everyone else with the cycling podcast and everyone else with the cycling YouTube channel and every other cycling.com that the numbers need to change, and that the UCI might have before these rules come into effect next year, I think they need to just revise the numbers that they've settled on. I personally kind of agree that these rules are needed, but yeah, I think the exact figures are incorrect. So anyway, one to watch, one to hopefully see whether enough public pressure can get them to change it. I know there's a lot of governing bodies and a lot of people lobbying the UCI at the moment to rethink their decision. So one to watch. All right, well let's change pace a little bit. Let's talk about some of these new wireless gizmos that have come out this week. There's some on the mountain bike side, some on the road side, both of which converge in the gravel side of things. But yeah, let's talk about what SRAM's been up to. So Suvi, you went to the launch for this one. Where was that launch?
It was in Portugal.
Where you did your chain factory tour.
It might have coincided with that one.
Interesting. Okay.
No, I did. Yeah, it was near Coimbra, so yes.
Nice. Well, what did SRAM show you, and what is now released?
So there's a new E1 generation Force and Rival. So it's been a bit over a year since they released the top tier red group set with the improved ergonomics that Alex touched on, that lengthen your reach a little bit. Basically, they've trickled down the technology from red to the more affordable group sets. So 2 group sets at once. Obviously, there's been a lot of chat about the Force. I think it leaked a few months ago. But there's also a new rival. So yeah, I think Force is pretty much 40% of the SRAM red price, and rival retails for less than half of the red. So price-wise, obviously, quite a big difference. And a lot of the tech that made red so special, they improved ergonomics of the shifters. But I think more importantly, what they did to the braking performance, that's now trickled down. And I would say, having ridden the 3 group sets back to back, it's really, really hard to tell the difference between them. There are differences between them, but the actual performance side, I think you'd be hard pressed.
Yeah.
To tell.
So let's sort of talk about. There's technically 4 group sets that they've released. So there's the road going groups in both Rival and Force, and then there's the more gravel focused 1x13 speed Explore group that came out in red last year, and that's the one that the 1x13 speed requires a frame with a UDH hanger, so it sort of uses the SRAM's full mount system that sandwiches the dropout. You have to have a frame with a UDH, but then the road stuff mimics red's road stuff, where it fits basically any frame. You can run in 1x with certain cassette sizes, predominantly designed to be run in 2x, and all of those are now available in the 3 price tiers. Weight-wise, Suvi, like roughly, it's what, like 200 grams added with each?
It's roughly 200, a bit over 200 between each tier. And so if you compare red to rival, it's like 640-ish grams, depending. Power meter, obviously there's power meter options, so that tweaks it a little bit. But I would say that's a considerable difference, the 600. But then the 200 between force and rival, I don't know whether you'd really be noticing it.
Yeah. So, in terms of technical details, I'd say the force is incredibly similar to red in many, many ways. Like there's very marginal differences. Like in the shifter, like force loses the contact pad adjustment, which no one ever used and didn't really seem to do anything anyway in the red. They also, you retain the bonus buttons, but there's now a new hood shape, which is a bit more like, probably I'd say a bit more aggressive in the grip that it offers. And then the rival shifter...
Or the hood cover.
Not
the shape,
the hood cover.
But,
and it makes that bonus button a little bit more obvious, where the red one, people complained that it was a little bit hard to push at times or hard to spot. So, and then the rival shifter ditches the bonus button and moves away from a carbon fiber lever blade, but otherwise feels awfully similar. So... there's little nuances, but I'd say the biggest differences are price and weight, and then power meters. So what's happening in the power meters?
Oh, power meters. So for rival, you can only get one-sided, so spindle-based power meter, and for force, you can still get the dual-sided. Or there's two options for force, so you can get spider-based or spindle-based, two dual-sided or one-sided power meters. So, better for force. And instead of what they did with red, you can now also change the chain rings on those power meter cranksets. So it's a little bit more user-friendly.
That's actually a little bit different to what happened with red, because red, that E1 red that came out last year, they had stuck with their integration in the 2x crank. If you wanted the spider-based power meter in a 2x crank, those chain rings were still a one-piece component of the power meter. So you wear out your chain rings, you wear out your power meter. But that's different in force, where they've now moved to their thread mount system, which the chainring basically threads as one piece onto the power meter. And so I think that's actually one area where the new force is ahead of or better than red in a sense. So that's nice to see.
I wouldn't be surprised actually if people that are currently running red power meters, when it comes to replace it, don't switch over to force unless they're particularly wedded to having the complete group set or the aesthetic of red. Because something that I'm, not all that frequently, but something I do want to change every now and then are the chain rings I'm using. And if you wear the chain rings out and it's time to replace the red cranks and power meter, I believe SRAM do give you a discount as long as it's within the first 5 years. But if you're just doing it out of wanting to change the chain rings because you're going to ride somewhere particularly hilly, or you're wanting to experiment with different chain rings, that isn't an option, and it would mean buying a new power meter and crank. Whereas, going back to a separate chainring and power meter means that you do have the freedom and flexibility to actually do a bit of experimentation with chain rings and swap them over at relative ease.
It still requires a special proprietary tool to do so, which unthreads the ring, and it does come with expense in that those rings are proprietary to SRAM, so they're probably more expensive to chainring costs you're used to seeing. But you can, if you do have red, you can keep your existing crank arms, and you can just bolt the new force thread mount spider-based power meter on straight in place onto those crank arms. So and that thread mount spider-based meter actually will work on any of the 8-bolt crank arms, including the new force and rival cranks as well. So you can get that premium power meter onto basically any level of those new SRAM cranks. But I think for me probably the most interesting aspect of all of this is just the interchangeability between all three tiers. And so I think, we'll probably see a lot of people mixing and matching as the budgets allow. And I think there's some savvy parts in, say, the red level. Maybe maybe you'd get a red crank, or I'm thinking more of it on the Explore side. The red crank is lighter, but you'd probably save significant money with like a force cassette and chain and shifters, and you'd end up with a really lightweight, high premium group set without hitting that red price point. So I think for me that's one of the more exciting elements of this, is that there's now options other than a $600 cassette for for the Red Explore. So
yeah, I think also the backwards compatibility, which like SRAM has been pretty good with.
Yes.
As long as there's not big changes between, there might be at some point they're going to break the chain, as so to speak, and they're not going to be compatible anymore.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I think there's a lot of people who probably have bought bikes in the recent months as well. People buy bikes, and maybe you bought the previous generation. Now you see this coming, and you're like, "Oh, I really want the new brakes, especially or new shifters."
Yeah,
and you could just get the shifters, and that's going to be compatible with your Axis group set, your existing one. So I think that's brilliant, because I could see if I had a rival or force bike, I would definitely not go for the full group set. I wouldn't be that bothered about it, but I would definitely recommend anyone upgrading to the new shifters if you can afford it, because they're so much better.
Yeah, that's something we concluded last year with the release of Red, that you know, a lot of it's ignoring the Explore gravel stuff, which is quite different. But yeah, if you had any bike using 12-speed Axis shifter in a drop bar configuration, then yeah, those Red E1 levers and the brakes were just night and day better. That it would be an instant upgrade to anyone on any level of drop bar Axis bike. And yeah, I think the main takeaway once again is that's same thing applies, but now you can do it far cheaper than what you could a week ago. So I think it's really good news for anyone that's bought into the SRAM system in recent years. Yeah, but yeah, otherwise I would just send people to our respective coverage on Escape Collective. So Suvi, you've been spending a bunch of time on the 2x setups, predominantly the Rival, and so you wrote that up covering what's new in the 2x. I've just spent the last few weeks playing with the Force Explore, which I put on a bike which had Red Explore beforehand, and if I'm being honest, kind of it's the exact same experience. I don't even know if I'd bother swapping it back if I didn't have to. So I think that's quite telling of how close this is to the Red stuff. And I've written up a sort of introduction, early thoughts on that as well. So yeah, that's all now live by the time you're hearing this. So go check it out, including my reason for buying Lego. So cool. All right. Well, should we keep the wireless chat going? I think there's another brand that have their hand up waiting for us to talk about them. So, Alex, you've ridden this one up. It comes from the mountain bike side, but again, it is relevant to those with drop bar bikes. So, what is it?
Well, it only feels like 2 weeks ago we were talking about Shimano finally entering the wireless shifting space in mountain biking, and already they've gone past XTR and decided to drop XT and a Deore level Di2 platform.
Yep.
So, yeah, after 7 years of waiting, we've got 3 group sets in the space of 14 days. So, definitely trying to play catch up with SRAM on this one.
I did in my review say, keep holding your breath if you're waiting for cheaper options. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Which is the closest I could come to telling you that this is coming without breaking an NDA that I had to sign. So, it annoyed me that Shimano were tight-lipped on this element of it, given that it was, it's not around the corner. It's basically, they purposely held it back just to give XTR some breathing room. So, anyway, I think the XT is available now. I think the Deore stuff hasn't completed production yet, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's still a few months away. They haven't even been able to give us claimed weights for it. But yeah, the XT is now available, like the XTR is available. What are the basics there? I think let's start with the XT.
Yeah, for sure. I think fundamentally XT and XTR, there's not a huge deal separating them, apart from obviously XTR, the R does stand for racing, and it's very clear in what you are missing in XT is some stuff aimed at the racer. So the wheels offered at XT are alloy. They still move over to cartridge bearings in the hubs like XTR did, but you're not getting the XE or Enduro rim. There's just one standard alloy rim that uses a 30mm internal width. So that's one of the differences. And the other key difference, especially for those that might be looking to do some cross-country racing, is there's no narrower Q factor crank. So if you do want to use a crank developed for XE, 168 Q factor, I believe.
Yes.
That is only going to be available on the XT group set. So
XTR.
you will still have to fork out the premium cash for that. Yes, sorry, XTR.
Yeah. And
but beyond that, a lot of the changes are across both platforms. So the 9-45 cassette in short cage rear derailleur that carries over into XT. The same shifter ergonomics with individual paddle adjust carries over, and also the ability to get an e-bike specific rear derailleur that plugs straight into an e-bike will also be available. So fundamentally, and the brakes. The brakes also get the same redesign with the new low viscosity mineral oil. So a lot of the performance side of the XTR group set is found at XT. It's just for less money and a little bit more weight.
Yeah. How much less money is it? Have you done those numbers?
It's not a huge jump in price, but it is still, I would say, significant enough for you to consider XT, because the XTR upgrade kit sits at $985, whereas XT is $860, so around $130 less.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get to a third option, which brings that price even lower. But yeah, I think it's just worth noting. You mentioned the 9-45 tooth cassette before. There is also the standard 10-51 tooth cassette with the longer derailleur. It is also using like the same new wireless battery that Shimano just introduced, with the battery sitting in the parallelogram. So yeah, all of this tech is something we Alex and I discussed with Nick Murdoch from Shimano a few weeks back. So there is a dedicated podcast about this in the Geek Warning section, and there is also obviously a very detailed write up on XTR, which kind of gives you a glimpse and deeper look into all this tech that Shimano's introduced. The other thing worth reminding about is, we mentioned upgrade kits there, because Shimano didn't really make any significant changes to, there's no changes to the chain, there's no significant changes to the cassette or really the chainring interface. So you can, if you've got a 12-speed Shimano shifting mountain bike, you can basically get these upgrade kits and just convert your existing stuff to wireless with what's basically a new derailleur and a new shifter. So yeah, there's some cool stuff here, but it's as we've sort of covered with XTR, it's not gonna, it's not a game changer. It's sort of just the parts some of us have been waiting years for. But yeah, I think in addition to that, you can still, like XTR, you can also sync up your dropbar 12-speed Shimano shifters to it. So whether that's GRX or Ultegra Durace 105, if they're wireless, then you can plug them or not plug them, get them to talk to this new derailleur. So you can do mullet setups on gravel bikes now.
I would say there is one thing that is potentially game-changing from Shimano.
Oh.
And that is actually when we look down to the last group set.
Oh, yes.
Because instead of it being SLX, which is going to continue as a mechanical group set, they've jumped straight down to Deore for their final Di2 offering. And this is only available as an upgrade kit, so it's just a shifter and a rear derailleur at the minute.
Yeah, they're not doing any other new parts.
It means that for riders, especially e-bike riders, that have long had to deal with the internal cabling of a Shimano mechanical group set, the ability to now keep the Shimano parts, the cassette, the chain, the cranks, and just make the switch over to a wireless group set that now no longer means that removing motors and batteries is a standard part of recabling your bike. This makes life a hell of a lot easier for you. And I think out of all of the three group sets, this is probably going to be the one that flies off the shelves the quickest.
Yeah, I agree. So what is the price of the upgrade kit for Deore?
So the upgrade kit for Deore, which is just the shifter, rear derailleur, a charger, and the battery, comes to $675.
That's a good, $300 cheaper than the top.
So it's around $200 cheaper than XT, and just over $300 cheaper than XTR. So significantly cheaper.
All right, so quite a good saving there, and we, as mentioned before, we don't know the weight of this, but I think you're right in that this is going to be a good upgrade for anyone with a bike, with a mountain bike that has the housing going through the headset, or worse, housing through the headset and then past an e-bike motor. I think any of those bikes, and there's a surprising number of them on the market, any of those bikes running Shimano 12-speed at the moment, I think this is going to be a pretty popular upgrade for. So I'm looking forward to seeing it, and hopefully in the near time even riding it and testing it, see how it compares to the higher end stuff. That said, the one part that does worry me, I think, Alex, you and I both kind of in the review of XTR, we sort of complained a little bit. Well, I complained a lot. I think you complained a little bit of the ergonomics of the shifter. And XT and XTR have like a heap of adjustment where you can really change up the both shift buttons are sort of like on this ball joint. You can adjust them independently. What do you think about Deore not having that adjustment? Do you think you'd be able to get a comfortable shift out of it?
I'd have to see what they've settled on as the position to fix it as, but I definitely think that it's something that if you are going to potentially put this on your bike, just seeing if you can wrap your hand around a bar and do some fake shifts and just see how it feels is definitely worthwhile, because depending on the size of your hand and more importantly the size of your thumb, you may actually run into some issues with shifting that all of a sudden make this idea of wireless shifting more troublesome than it's probably worth if you can't actually successfully do a shift with the rear paddle.
Yeah. So one I guess you and I are probably eager to figure out, but worst case scenario, the recommendation should probably be go a Deore rear derailleur with an XT shifter, and that way you get all the adjustability, but with the cheaper derailleur. But anyway, this is another one. Alex, you wrote this one up on Escape, so head to escapecollective.com. Our parent, our employer, the creator of this podcast and all that's good. And you'll find the write-up on Deore and XT there with details on weights and pricing and all that. So all right, well, those are the big topics of this week. There are also a couple of other relatively big / important. They'd probably be the main topics on any other week, but they've certainly fallen under the shadow of the likes of SRAM and Shimano and the UCI this week. So let's just quickly cover off a few of the other items on the run sheet. The first one being the Cervelo. Cervelo have released the new Aspero 5, which is their gravel race bike. It comes a year after, or approximately a year after, they updated the Aspero, which is more their all-rounder and more affordable gravel bike. But the Aspero 5, premium, high-end gravel machine. Frame sets, I believe, start at $5,500 US. Complete bikes with SRAM Force, the new SRAM Force, start from $8,700 US. So premium bike, but what to say about it? It's very aero. There's some big claims about how aero it is. I won't repeat them because we don't know what those numbers are really in relation to. I think what they claim, was it 37 watts faster than the previous Aspero 5? And then they say similarly as fast. Similar benefits against their main competition, but I don't actually know what that means. So
don't say who is that.
Yeah.
Or what bike is that?
Yeah, like it's hard to know whether that's like a specialized Crux, because that would be the bike they're selling against, or whether it's like an aero gravel bike like a Factor Ostro Gravel or 3T's Exploro. So certainly Cervelo's not the first to do an aero gravel bike, but other details, they have a storage hatch in the very aero down tube, which is, as you can imagine, space limited because of its aeroness. They have moved to a threaded bottom bracket. It's now T47 asymmetric, which is nice to see. And the stock bikes, at least the ones I've seen, come with a CeramicSpeed bottom bracket fitted as stock, which is pretty cool. And then, I guess the main tidbit that will upset most people is recommended maximum tire clearance of 45 millimeters. You probably can squeeze a 50 mil in there if you're like most pros and ignoring the actual recommended maximum tire clearance on the bikes they're riding. But it is probably a little bit more limited than what most people would have expected. And I think this goes back to something I keep saying, which is there's different segments of gravel that we're starting to see, and I think this is the UCI end of gravel, where it's like kind of leaning on the road and high speeds and zero single track, zero underbiking, not significantly rough terrain, and as a result of that, it does have a UCI sticker on the frame, so you could line up to a sanctioned cyclocross race or even a road race on this bike if you're so pleased. So
what are the handlebars like? Do they comply?
Yeah, depends how much you angle those levers in. But on the 54 centimeter, I got I have one of these bikes now for a review. On the 54 centimeter, I think it comes with a bar that's 40 centimeters. 40? Yeah, 40 at the hoods, I think. So they would comply, but yeah, you just need to be sensible with how much tilt you have. But I'm sure smaller sizes would not comply. There's some interesting things with this bike. I'll probably save it for a future, maybe when we next do a info review podcast episode. I also do plan to write up this bike a week or two later on. I'll do a bit of an info review article, a first look kind of thing, showing the details of this bike. But there's some cool details. But yeah, I don't know. It perhaps says more about me than the bike that I was most excited to find that Cervelo's providing Arundel mandible carbon cages with all of these Aspero 5 bikes, which I think is a very unexpected pick, but my favorite cage. What are the chances? So
I think generally bikes should come with bottle cages more often. Just like not even those high-end bottle cages, but like a decent bottle cage.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that I see people go and buy a bike, but then they don't buy a bottle cage, and then they're carrying their water bottle in their jersey pocket or something for weeks.
Yes,
because there's so many options, and it's the same as with the plastic pedals. You could get going with a cheaper bottle cage. But it's a lot better to carry the bottle in a cage than your pocket.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not actually sure why they settled on the Arundel one, because like that's a pretty premium cage, and no doubt they could have found cheaper options. But I'm not complaining; it's a great cage. But the manual does call out being having to pay close attention to the use of certain bottle cages with the storage hatch design that they have. Like it's kind of like this cantilevering, pivoting storage hatch, and so maybe this is Cervelo's way of getting around that. They just give you a really great bottle cage that you'd have no reason to change out, and then you don't run into fitment issues.
Yeah, I'm thinking because we talked about this, whether this is the same design for the hatch, because I have not seen the actual mechanism as the Caledonia 5 has, and I obviously criticised the system on that one, and it's definitely more of an issue for small frame sizes, but the bottle cage shape does play a part in that, so I wonder if Cervelo's now doing something about it. Not changing the actual design, but telling people to use a different type of bottle cage instead.
The manual does have a lot of related pieces to it. Like they provide shims in case your bottle cage fouls on the design. They recommend you put like protective tape on the frame. There's also multiple like mounting points in the hatch lid, which doubles as like the point where you mount the bottle cage to. And what I wasn't aware of, and Suvi, I don't know if you know if this is the case with the Caledonia you tested, but you can actually flip the hatch, and they recommend you doing that depending on whether you want to run one bottle cage or two bottle cages.
Yeah. So it didn't work any better. It was like worse and slightly better, or worse than slightly better.
I found flipping it so the latch is actually at the bottom. Gravity then works against you when you're trying to put it back, and like it sort of like tries to lock itself, and then you're having to like fight the latch. Yeah. Anyway. I'm sure I'll get used to it, but early impressions are that it's not the most refined of the storage hatches, but is perhaps the most aero. So that's really what it counts. So I say that with absolute sarcasm. So that's the latest gravel bike I've got in my work stand. Suvi, what's the latest gravel bike you've been spending time with?
I've spent a lot of time, painful moments with this bike already. Orbea has launched the new Terra, so it's a more kind of adventure style bike than what the previous generation Terra was.
TERRA as opposed to TERROR.
Terra
as in land, not terror as in fearful.
Yes.
Terror. Oh, right. Okay. Terror. Terra. Anyway, so more mounting points, more tire clearance, more wheelbase, more everything basically. Also, speaking of storage hatches, this one has an extra large storage compartment. So they've added, I think it was a third more than the previous one had. To be honest, the previous generation Terra had I would say it was quite small storage space, but Orbea said that they noticed when they were researching what to change in this, that people really want to store a lot of things in their frame, which I was slightly surprised about. because I don't really ever have the urge to stash a lot of things in there. As long as the basic spares fit in, that's it. I would definitely not want to store a banana in there because I keep storing even snacks in my back pockets and forget about them, let alone the down to.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's 50mm official tire clearance for this one, so bigger one. But then at the same time, Orbea has always been quite conservative with their tire clearances, so they said that you could fit a 2.1 quite comfortably on it as well. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Is it suspension corrected?
No, it's not. They were kind of not really. Yeah, they said you could run a suspension on it, but they've not taken that on account, and we're not too convinced on it. But it does have a dropbar compatibility, so it's got around 27.2 seat post, which I really like. That it's just easy to swap parts. The Terra also, it comes with separate stem and handlebar, so there's a brand new handlebar. There is also an integrated handlebar option, but as stock they come with 2-piece cockpit. So yeah,
gotcha. And
because Orbea does the Mayo thing, so you can customize things, you could actually swap your handlebar width and stem length, which is very positive.
Cool. So is it called the Terra or the Terra Adventure? What's the official name for it?
It's just called Orbea Terra.
Cool. Nice one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a bike that Josh actually shot at Unbound as well. So even though Orbea doesn't really say that it's a race bike, it's obviously they did say that this is more of a gravel race bike for those kind of long distances like the Unbound or Track, the longer distance options there where you actually want more comfort rather than straight out stiffness and speed.
Yeah, nice one. Okay. Well, yeah, I think we'll see that one. I think you might be doing up an info review article on that just to give a glimpse at the bike before a longer term review. So keep an eye out for that one. And then, yeah, I mean, lucky last on the tech news front for this week of the big stuff is a new chain wax. So new chain wax. It's CeramicSpeed are actually surprisingly, I'm going to say they're kind of like the first mover in the hot melt wax market. They were really one of the first to have pre-wax chains, like race day chains with their UFO chains. They're one of the first to have a hot melt wax, but they never sold it. So they've kind of seen their market that they kind of created come and grow into this big, massive, popular thing, and they've never actually offered their chain wax that has been a key product for them for years and years and years. And that now changes. They've just launched their first ever hot melt wax that you can actually purchase without having to get it pre-applied to a chain. And yeah, it's an endurance specific wax. So it's not their fastest thing that they do. If you still want their fast wax, you still have to buy a pre-treated chain from them. But this one comes with some pretty big claims around just how long it'll last. So yeah, they're claiming up to 1,000 kilometers on a single application. And up to 750 kilometers in the rain. Like their drip lubes, it's non-toxic and it's also biodegradable, which is cool to see. And then I guess the most surprising part is it's actually quite price competitive. So they're selling it in a few different configurations, but the one that I think's most interesting is that you can buy it for US $53 and you get 400 grams of wax, and it comes in a large plastic container with a little chain holder. And that plastic container kind of looks a bit like it's like a wet wipe container, I guess. It's like this cylindrical large plastic container. And basically you can put that container with the wax in it straight into like a water bath on your stovetop and do your chain in that without having to need a fancier cooker. Being a hard plastic container, it'll also hold together better than like a bag method. So I think that's pretty cool. And for $53 for that makes it like cheaper than say like Silka hot melt wax. If you were to then add Silka's like endurance chip, which would then turn it into an endurance wax, that combination would be $69. So yeah, CeramicSpeed kind of coming in with a more affordable product that claims to last longer, I think is super interesting. And I know Ronan and myself are going to be looking to comparing this against some other popular waxes that claim to be really long in the single application longevity. So stay tuned on that one. We'll try to figure out some real world distances on how well these last. So, but yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's having been someone reporting on chain wax for what feels like almost a decade now. I think it's neat to see CeramicSpeed, that have been such a pioneer in the space, actually release a product in the space. So I'm all for it. And now Suvi and Alex just woke up. Hello.
Yeah. Need to repeat all that, please.
Anyway, so final note on the CeramicSpeed wax. They call it the UFO Ultra Endurance, but the final note is you can also buy it just in a bag of, like, I think it's 750 grams of wax without the container. So if you've already got your own wax pot, then there's well priced options for you as well. But yeah, more options are good in the space, and this stuff's getting really good. So I think it's CeramicSpeed did publish some of the stats from Zero Friction Cycling, and it sort of looked like this stuff as far as like chain wear protection. It looks like CeramicSpeed is sort of roughly comparable, depending on how you look at it, to Silka and Rex are the ones. And Molten Speed Wax, which is another original. Those four are sort of competing closely with each other for the best claim for wax, but not a heap separating these days. All right, well, that's all the new things to discuss this week. Given all the big new things, we'll save what's on our minds, and to be honest, those big things have been on our minds. We'll save the PSA and the unrelated conversations till next week. And also by then we might also have Ronan back, who is still riding around Island. He had a few setbacks, few moments of failure from the body, but hope he's doing well. And as a reminder, he's out there raising awareness and money for the Natasha Allergy Research Foundation. So you can head to his own Instagram, Ronan McLaughlin, or find his article on Escape about how to support his cause and why he's doing it. It's definitely for good reason. And lastly, I'm just a few days away from, or by the time you're hearing this, I'm probably at the Spoken Bike Show, which is coming to Sydney for the first time. But yeah, it's Australia's handmade bicycle show, and there's also a number of other brands that's more mainstream, more boutiquey, that will be there as well. So I think over 75 exhibitors. And yeah, if you see me, I'll give you a high five. That's all I'll have on me. But please say hi if you do see me walking around. It'd be great to meet you. All right, well, yeah, it's time to get on to Ask a Wrench. This week, we got Brad Copeland answering questions with myself. And the questions are what we think are the best cone wrenches for those old school cone-based hubs. There's a question about ignoring SRAM's guidelines for chainring sizing and how well that'll shift. There's some question related to shock pump woes with a rear shock, and one about a Shimano front derailleur that feels very high on resistance and our tips for fixing that. So if you'd like to hear all that, you will need to be a member of Escape Collective. So if you're not already, please head to escapecollective.com/join, become a member, support everything that we do at Escape Collective, including this podcast, and then gain everything that we do at Escape Collective. All right. Thank you, everyone. Suvi, Alex, thanks for joining. Until next week. Cheers.
This episode was produced, edited, and mixed by Will Jones at Red Bricks Media.